about 31 years ago, right on Thanksgiving or the day before, Sherry's mother died. Had a heart attack. And we were in Utah at the time, and we came to Missouri, to St. Louis with a funeral, and then we rode with her dad, Grandpa Jack, back to the farm north of Columbia near Moberly, Missouri. And the next day or so, we had to go to town, had to get the Social Security taken care of, a number of things and paperwork. So we were busy looking for the papers, and Matt was underfoot. He was 6 years old at the time. He was just in the way. And I don't think I said get lost, but I did tell him to go out and play with the dogs. Now, Grandpa Jack's farm was mostly woods, had a barnyard, and there's some fields out back, but mostly surrounded by Missouri woods. And these are a lot of little trees, about that big, solid. And we got our paper together. We looked up and Matt was gone. We looked outside and the dogs were gone too. And we didn't know what happened, so we hollered for him. And we hollered and we hollered and we hollered. And then we heard something, our own echo, from the next hill over. So Sherry and I decided we were going to go out and look for him. We went out into the woods and we went around about, 100 yards north of the house, went into the woods. We were going around behind the farm area. And in those woods, absolutely thick. You thought you could see, but then Sherry stepped behind. It was like a screen of trees. They weren't all together, but they blocked her out. I couldn't see her. We yelled for him, and our voices were just sucked out of the air by the leaves on the ground. There at the end of November, beginning of December. And our whistles, we have a family whistle, and it was just blown away by the wind. And the sky overhead was just solid gray. Solid gray. You think you have gray skies here. This is Missouri. They know solid gray. And there's a little bright spot where the sun might have been. And we kept looking for him, wandering through the woods. We go down into a valley, and we look up that hill. If we could just get up to the top of that hill, we could see. And we scrambled to the top of the hill, and there was another valley and another hill. There's nothing to see. Those deceptive woods. We hurried and we ran and we yelled and we whistled, and we wound up about half a mile farther down the road from the farm than we thought we were. We were almost lost. We got back to the farmyard, and Grandpa Jack had done the right thing. He called the sheriff's department. There was a patrol car in the drive. And the deputy told us, well, I've got it under control. I've put on the radio, and I've called the equine club, and I've called the various others around, and I've called the National Guard. If it runs late, they'll be here with searchlights on helicopters. And if, I also called the equine club. That's it, because they'll probably find him. And then we waited, and people started showing up, and they parked their pickup trucks up and down that county road, quarter mile each way. And people came, and they gathered, they talked a little, they decided where they were going to go, and they headed off into the woods. They headed off in various directions. One old fella came up and says, well, I know there are 4 or is it 5 old empty wells out there. And I'm going to go check and make sure he didn't happen to fall into one. And he's walking away. He says, or is it 6? There's nothing we could do. We could have gone out too, maybe, but we wouldn't have found him. There were all these other people out there looking, so we just stood by the patrol car and listened to the phone, the radio. Listened to that radio hiss and pop. An airplane. He called a helicopter, an airplane. And the helicopter came and chopped overhead and then started its spiral out away. And the airplane started its back and forth over the skies. The hunt dog, the bloodhound came, and Sherry gave him a sock, one of Matt's socks, and then headed off with his trainers behind him. We listened to that radio, hoping for some kind of news. The airplane came on. People in the airplane came on and says, "We've seen a boy down there with some dogs. We're going to circle around and come back and check." Okay, maybe they found him. They circled around. "Does the boy have a gun?" Not our boy. The dog trainer called in, and they found his trail. They found the track, and they're following the track. Remember that guy who was looking for all the wells? He'd walked right across and spoiled the scent. And the dogs were lost. And we waited. Baptist came. Baptist Auxiliary, the Baptist women came and had sandwiches and cocoa and coffee. And we visited with them a little bit. The radio station from Moberly came down, and they brought their remote van, and they were interviewing everybody except us. They were just leaving us to deal with it, which was a good thing, because we didn't need to talk. Actually, from their point of view, it was not about us. It was about all the people in the community who were doing all these great things. They were out there looking for the Lord. Finally, the horse trailer came, and they unloaded, and they saddled up, headed off, and the deputy was real confident. He says, if anybody's going to find them, they'll find them. But if it's not, we've got the National Guard down in Sedalia on call, and they'll be here if it turns dark. Well, it was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and we waited, and we waited, and we waited. Then it happened. It was almost a surprise. We heard this boy coming out, a young college student, broke out of the brush behind the barn and came running to him. They found him. The people on horseback have found him. And I ran to him. I said, "Which way?" And he pointed back that way. He said, "But they're bringing him back by way of the road." And it suddenly dawned on me, I wanted to be with my son so bad. And yet if I ran back into those woods, he'd be back. And I'd be lost. So I turned around a little sheepishly, headed back. But they found him, and we couldn't contain our joy at that moment. Finally, the horses came parading up the road, and Matt's looking at all the cars and wondering why all of this is going on just for him. And they let him down off the horse, handed him down to us. He came up, we hugged, and it was fantastic. It was like Christmas times 1,000. The most wonderful feeling I have ever felt in my life. The radio guy came up and was ready to interview us, and he said, "Son, did you know you were lost?" Great radio. Asked me, and I told him it was the best moment in my life. My son was lost, but now he is found. And that's the way it is. You see? You know that story we call the prodigal son, but the real prodigal means outrageously generous, giving everything. Well, it should be called the prodigal father and his sons. Because it's the father who gave and gave and gave. The kid says, "I want my inheritance. I wish you were dead. Give me my inheritance." Dad pulls out a checkbook, writes a check for half of his wealth. Half of everything. Gives it to the boy. He cashes the check. He heads off. And then he finally comes to his senses. And he comes home, realizing that he will never get the money again. But he's got his father to be with. And can work as a hired hand maybe. And make his own way. And that generous father, outrageously generous, runs to him while he's still a long ways off, because he has that feeling like a Christmas times 1,000, and he runs to him and hugs him and gives him a big party. That's the moment. Now, the radio ran the entire story, the tape story, the next day, and our friends who lived in Moberly said, "Yeah, we listened to it the second time with the same breathlessness as the first." And then I had a big article in the paper, and we went to town finally to do all that stuff, and Grandpa Jack he's the lost boy, and I was going, "Oh, Why do you have to do that? We were living in Utah, so we flew home. The Associated Press had picked it up, and it ran as a little article in the paper there in Utah. 6 hours of our lives reduced to 2 column inches. You know? Hours become 70, 80 words. And the easy things got inflated. The number of cars there became, went from 100 to 200, and there were 2 helicopters and 4 airplanes and the National Guard and the whole 9 yards. It became a huge thing in the paper. Because, when you tell the story, just as I'm telling it now, you cannot carry across what it was like to live through it. And so you have to exaggerate things. I didn't exaggerate much. Because that's the way life is. We all, in our lives, in a lot of ways, are wandering through the woods. We're hunting for someone. We're trying to find where we're at. Or we just got some dogs with us, and we run and they follow us. And then they run and we follow them. And it's a mighty adventure, this life, because here's this tree with that interesting bark, and over here is a log across the creek, and we have to cross that log, and we slip and fall into the little water. And then we look up, and that light place in the gray clouds is heading down, sliding down, and we look around, and we realize we are lost. We don't know where home is. And then the dogs start making a racket. And they go around a hill out of sight, and they continue their barking, and they're carrying on. And then here comes some guy on a horse. And he looks down at us and he says, "Your father is waiting for you. Your mother wants to hug you." He gives us the hand we need and draws us up and takes us home. Now, I don't know how to attach this to Christmas or Advent, but I know that a lot of what we're doing is trying to understand how lost we are and what way to go to get home. And so God sent His Son, not as a big king with all the splashy stuff, but as a little baby. So that it's not about Jesus loving us, it's about us loving Jesus. And when we love Jesus, we learn that we can love each other. And in knowing each other and helping each other and being there with the sandwiches and the coffee and reaching out, we are being Christ, and we are seeing Christ, and we are living Christ in everything we do. And in some way, we're not so lost anymore.